whenever I tell the guys, can you have 100 female friends? They always get to like 6 and they're like, yeah, one of them wanted to sleep with me. I'm like, duh, I know, bro. Like, that's always what's going to happen.
So this is the Matrix copy, and I want to stick with that a little bit more. I think there's a book. It's Very Important People, I think, right? Where it talks about it talks about the promoters, and I think there was she was a 30-year-old professor in university that went in undercover as a model, and then she got flown out to Mykonos and New York and all of these parties, and she writes about this life of how other women will like you if there are other pretty women around, right? Just to make sure it's copy.
It's one of the funniest things. If you read that book and don't pay attention to any of her descriptions about the book or her interpretation, it's a fantastic book. If you like, it's very clear. Like, she went out, had to party, drank, like studied this whole society. She definitely had a good time.
Yeah, she did.
She absolutely made friends with a bunch of people. And then at the end of every chapter, she has this caveat about how this is all based on patriarchy and racism. And I'm like, Ashley, that's not true. You had a fucking good time. Like, she's like, the whole thing is based on racism. And then she explains that 19 of the 40 club promoters she met were black, but it's based on racism. And then it was like, the whole thing is based on a patriarchy and women are just exploited. Meanwhile, she's flown to Paris, or she's flown to France to like be on a yacht. And it was like, and then gets to eat free food. And it's like, yes, you're exploited. It was just one of the craziest things. But the book's description, 10 out of 10. The book's interpretation, I would like to, hopefully I've emailed Dr. Mears a couple times. Hopefully I can get her on the show. I don't want to bash her, but like, it's very clear that like this book looked like she took her doctoral thesis and turned it into a book. And in doing so, she had to include some wokeness so that her thesis would be accepted.
Doesn't get canceled.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah,
that's what.
And she was also bashing, some of those promoters, right, that did pay these bills for her. It's like, oh, one day he's gonna hit it big, and he just always talked about it but never got there. Which, I mean, if you take, Adam.
Yeah, but they never talked about the fact that the promoters were being taken advantage of the same way. Like, it was really funny. It was like it was a patriarchy, but the patriarchy was taking advantage of men. So she didn't see the irony there. Like, that was the issue, and that the men, like, of their own volition, were constantly around other the club promoter. This is a very common thing you guys will see if you live in Miami, if you live in New York, if you live in Vegas, if you live in Los Angeles. Club promoters and VIP hosts will consistently be around wealth, and so in their mind they see themselves as wealthy, but they're not wealthy. And they see themselves as like 1 or 2 deals away from becoming wealthy. Now, occasionally, like, they do become wealthy. An example would be Jason Strauss, who went from being club promoter to like owning clubs, or they pivot into high ticket sales or real estate and then become wealthy that way because they've used their skill set in the nightclubs as to become a salesperson. Those things do happen. But in the book, it was just one promoter after another who just barely made enough money to get by and always thought they were about to be a billionaire. Girl, I'm going to hit it big next year or whatever. And they were delusional. And I know so many club promoters who were very much the same way. And every week it was a new NFT grift, or it was a new crypto grift, or it was a new Forex grift, or it was a new binary stock grift, or it was a new, or like I'm quitting my job and I'm going to go do solar. And I'm like, bro, you're like so late to the party on this.
Yeah.
It was stuff like that. And then when you ask them like, hey man, do you actually want to learn a skill set like Amazon FBA, or actually go sell cars? Like, go try being a car salesman. That was beneath them, and they didn't want to do that. Why? Because they were around so much wealth and opulence, so they assumed that they were deserving of that private jet or that trip to Mykonos where they got paid to bring a bunch of girls, not understanding that those people that you were on the jet with do not see you as their equal, right? Actually, I would be another example of that. I would be an example of a guy who was doing stuff like that, who actually turned it into a real business. Most people in that situation don't do that.
Well, I think Adam from Saucecast, right? Adam used to be a promoter back in the day, but then he went and worked for sales, but he used those skills.
Because he used it for reverse insurance, which is he and PBD are both wealthy because of this reverse insurance industry that they're in. Basically, they buy time life insurance policies and then receive the payoff from them. Yeah. I love having threesomes. If I become a deca billionaire, I hope I never get to the point where I ever take for granted that I'm having a threesome. Every time I have a threesome, it's great. I never want to get to a point. I never want to get to a point where it's like, oh, another three. If I get to that point, I will go work at Walmart. Seriously, I will go live on the street. I will do something to reset my dopamine levels. I will go camp in the woods. If I ever get have such a low level of gratitude that like having a threesome is passe and boring to me, I need to reset the whole. You know what I'm saying?
So with MoA, how did MoA start? Because I know you blew up because you're posting a bunch of videos with extremely hot women, and I think that's how you blew up, right? But then the initial idea of going into MoA wasn't that. It's almost like, I think you've mentioned this before, where you kind of had to throw women in there for the guys to look serious at what you have to say. But your initial thought with MOA was because of these things that people believe in flat Earth, because of these things that people believe in astrology and numerology and this nonsense science is out there. You kind of want to teach
5 love languages.
Yeah, the 5 love languages or the vibes, like I'm an asparagus. That's why I crashed the car, So the
Asparagus.
So, well, I think you're trying to teach guys and how to become better men. Kind of like I think you've mentioned or someone else that there's this levers of 20% looks, 20% this, 20 kind of like a football player when you're building in a Madden, right? So how did that come about? When did you you know what, enough is enough? I'm gonna just start a course. Like how did that all come about?
If you want to the origins of what I teach in MOA would probably go back to when I ended up working at a strip club back in 01.
Yeah, that's what I want to hear. Yeah, exactly.
So it would be just seeing that the world, my mother, Disney, and the church, not my mother, my family in general, taught me or tried to express to me some concept of you be nice to people and they'll be nice to you back. And then I remember I was working at Gentlemen's Club and I would go back in the dressing room and I would just listen to the women talk, and it was fascinating to me. Guys, I'm 22. These are the hottest women I've ever, again, let me caveat this. I'm 22 years old.
Was this before Air Force?
That's me right now.
Yeah, way before it. Yeah, I didn't go to the Air Force until 26.
Okay.
Guys, I'm not I wasn't dating playmates back then. I was just like a dude who had graduated from high school a couple years before. I'm 22, 23 years old. I'm working at a strip club. At the time, now they would not be the hottest women I've ever seen. Then those were the hottest women I'd ever seen. I'm in the dressing room and I'm listening to them talk, and it was very clear that they would complain about a man and then sleep with the man they were complaining about. They would talk about a dude cheating on them and go back to the guy who was cheating on them. They would sit there and say things and then do completely the opposite of the things they said. And I listened to it over and over again. And that was sort of like my red pill moment, which ironically was the same time it was happening for Rolo, because that's when he started posting on SoSwap forums around the same time that I came to this discovery. Men of Action is something I was working on for probably 18, 19 years. I was coaching for free for probably from 2008 until 2019. I would go speak at people's seminars or whatever. And it was basically me trying to give back and give back the lessons that I wish someone had taught me. Like, for instance, I'll give you a lesson right now. I love the concept of guys going out and meeting, going up and cold approaching women, strange women or whatever. I like that idea because it gets you out of your head and it causes you to not worry about rejection so much. But what happened is that turned into an industry where guys got super weird and uncalibrated, the pickup industry, right? Mm-hmm. And what I did was I looked at what the pickup guys were saying, and then I looked at what the club promoters were saying, and then I looked at pickup artists' results, and I look at club promoters' results. And I would meet these club promoters in Atlanta, and they'd have 6 girlfriends, and they'd go to the club, and 70 girls would show up. And I was like, I'm going to listen to these guys. I'm going to listen. I stopped listening to pickup artists, and I started only paying attention to guys who were just slaying it with women. Dudes, it was if they wanted to, 7 girls a week every week would not be difficult. Those guys, and not particularly good looking guys, just guys who just had their logistics figured out. And I reverse engineered what they were doing. And then I used that concept for basically everything. So my background in physics kind of got me to understanding I have a hypothesis. I'm going to try to disprove the hypothesis. And I'm going to look for where these things might be right or wrong. And then I took that concept of scientific method and I took it to the dating realm. And that's where I came up with some of my hypotheses, and they worked for me. And I experimented with a lot of, I used Las Vegas as almost like a laboratory. I experimented what would happen if I did this instead of this. And so the concept that I came up with was the idea of why not have outrageous numbers of insanely hot female friends. Don't try to sleep with any of them. And then see how far I can push that. And I tell the guys this, I make it a challenge. I'm like, can you have 100 female friends? Well, the answer is, guys, no one can. Because what happens is once you get to 20, they start trying to sleep with you. These women will be like, how is this guy with so many women? Whenever I tell the guys, can you have 100 female friends? They always get to 6 and they're like, yeah, one of them wanted to sleep with me. I'm like, duh, I know, bro. That's always what's going to happen. But because the concept was totally ignored by pickup, that's another reason why I was just very critical of pickup. And then once I found that there was an actual professor teaching exactly what I was saying, mate choice copying, sexy sons hypothesis, and this concept of pre-selection, Dr. Buss, that's when I just delved into this. And then somebody finally told me, when people pay for your coaching, you'll notice they're going to be a lot more invested. So once we started charging for MOA, I found better clients who got more improvement. It's not how you would think, but if somebody paid you $100,000 for you to coach them and you taught them stuff, they would listen to everything you said and they would take action every single time you asked them to. And so even though they paid more, they would get more results, and you wouldn't have to do more work, and they'd still get better results.
I think it's more incentivized just because they paid?
Exactly. They take it more seriously because they have skin in the game. It is an incredible phenomenon that happened, and I didn't really believe it until I saw it happen. And now my top 50 guys now are better than anyone I coached before I started MOA.